All right, so welcome to our AdCom session. We have a lot of topics to cover tonight. And so I want to start, we're going to start with the Land Use and Economic Development Group. And, Mr. Town Manager, I did not warn you in advance. Can we talk a little, since Paige can't be here? And so we're still sort of looking at this as a collection of departments rather than the unified department it's going to be. Can you just talk briefly about how the departments were pulled together?
Sure. So good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. So we've done a couple reorganizations this year, and you saw the first one last week dealing with human services. The next one, which has not really been formally put together yet because we're waiting for Paige to return, which we hope to see her sometime by the middle of March, if everything continues to go as planned. But the next reorganization will be the department will be called Land Use, which will include planning, conservation, and building inspection. So those three departments traditionally, and actually more often than not, in fact, when we actually did some recent interviews, I think Scott Shippey, who was joining us tonight as the new building commissioner, he's familiar with that kind of organization, and actually has that is becoming more prevalent in communities around the state. So the reason being, of course, is that they do work very closely together. All three departments do, and I think in some cases there have been situations where other departments have joined as well. Economic development, of course, is still included in that function as well. So the board makeups, the planning board, the conservation commission, there's no change associated with any of those the reorganization. This is strictly a departmental organization, but the functions of the boards remain the same. So we have done that. We're planning to do that with this new group. Again, probably sometime middle of March, end of March, and certainly, of course, it'll be fully effective in July when the new budget process is complete.
Okay, that was very helpful. Any questions from the AdCom? Mm-hmm. All right, so we can move into the budget presentation. So we have a fair number of people talking to that first group to the point of it still being a separate group. So we've got Gabby Jordan from the Planning Department and Kevin Weinfeld, the chair of the Planning Board. We've got Scott Shippey, the Building Commissioner. We've got Jane Pierce, the Conservation Agent. So I think Christina should have reached out to y'all and talked about sharing your screen. I don't know if it was Gabby and Kevin first or what the plan of operation was there.
I don't have the ability to share screen. I don't have the latest of the budget. I know last week I saw that I think Marie was able to share our page of the budget, or I think Paul. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our budget. From last year, we tried not to spend a lot of money. We were pretty spendthrift. But we do have a budget for engineering that we have not spent too much on it, but our inspector retired in November, so we are in the process of, and he was, I think Paige pointed it out last year, he was, his salary was $40 per hour. We need to replace them. There's no way we're going to be able to find somebody at that price. So we are expecting to spend quite a bit of money of the engineering budget for this coming year. Other than that, I don't think that we have any changes except for the salary increase for the land use director because of her increase in responsibilities. But other than that, our budget hasn't changed.
So it's possible, Maria, I don't know, can you share your screen? Do you have the budget? You can share the screen with everybody so they can see that? So everybody can see that budget? Is it possible? There we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
So I will note that there's been no change to the land use director's salary as of yet because we have not reached a determination as to what that will be. increase will come once we're able to negotiate those. That position is actually in the union, so we're trying to figure out how that will fit. Those negotiations are ongoing as we speak, so we hope to have that resolved fairly soon.
Which union, Bill?
That is the Steelworkers Union.
Okay.
Bill, you have a separate budget for handling budget increases for the coming negotiations. I assume whatever this is part of that.
That is correct, Jack. That's correct. But it won't be reflected here because until after we reach a final resolution of that. So for purposes of this budget, the budget that you see is probably the right number.
I mean, at this point, it's almost literally flat, right? But that'll change whenever we figure out what we're paying the land use director.
Well, it won't
on the salary side. Okay.
The salary, the number will come out of that central line.
The central fund. Okay, so this will stay. Okay.
This number will stay. Yeah.
Marie, can you page down to the expenses? So you just kept it flat except for a few things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the engineering services will be going up, but I don't see where that is in this on
So
this.
the engineering services expenses will go up, but not the budget itself. The budget amount has remained the same.
Oh, there, yeah, okay. Yes, there it is. But you're saying there are decreases elsewhere.
Oh, what's happening, Jack, is that they haven't had to spend as much out of that line in the past. That's been used for a number of different expenses for engineering situations that arise for very specific projects and for ongoing inspections. But what's happened is, as Gabby pointed out earlier, that individual that was doing the inspections on some, like for subdivisions, for instance, would go out and do that work for about $40 an hour, which you won't be able to get that nowadays. Those expenses are just to secure somebody to do that work is going to be much higher. Difficult to find those folks right now. So the line will be the budget amount is the same, but the expense will go up.
Okay, Marie, you can keep going down. Thank you. Not much change, even with the things you just discussed.
No.
Right.
Done a good job of keeping everything pretty flat.
Yep. So is that it? So we've got the other pieces, right? We've got the building commissioner and the conservation agent. Are those do we just page down to get to those, or did we just go past the building piece as well?
We'll come right to that in a second.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
You should probably finish the planning board area first, Paul, before moving on.
Well, okay. Actually, I stand corrected. That number is they're all in there. All three departments are located in this budget. We combined all three budgets together.
So this is what Paige would have presented.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I was confused. So I apologize for that.
Yep. So were we.
So it's all in there, but you can see even with the changes, there's no real significant increase in cost.
No change. Really, no change in the conservation. Mr. Shippey, do you want to comment on any of this here?
Good evening, everybody. I noticed, I'm new to the game with this budget, so I'm fairly new at it. But as you can see in the, like I can explain the local inspector, how you see it was an increase of 25%. What happened there is we had a permit coordinator. They're no longer with us, and we moved some of those monies into local inspector because of workload that we have. He's a part-time, so those monies came out of the department administrator. So you can see a negative 32 right there. So there's not much increase there as well. So we kind of just like flip-flop roles there.
Yep.
And that's about it. And the only other increase I think was clothing allowance because we didn't have anything. I think I'm not sure if it's showing it on this.
Yep.
right there. We increased that because we don't have anything and we're in the public view every day. And we need to be presentable and identifiable. So I guess they increased that, and we are purchasing attire according to the branding style that we're trying to form for the town of Foxborough. I think that's about it.
Oh, I have a question. I can.
Go ahead.
It might be a small one, but I just want to make sure I understand it. In the budget, it's a small amount of money, but I just want to be clear because I've noticed this the last few weeks. In all departments that are under unions, which maybe most of them, I'm not quite sure, does the town pay their union dues and memberships in organization, or are those dues the membership in the organization?
Yeah, the individual
organization.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah, the individual union members pay their own dues.
Okay. So what are the dues here? Just professional organizations?
So professional organizations would be the dues for like, for instance, the building commissioner belongs to the Southeastern Mass building officials.
Okay.
The planning director belongs to the Mass Planning Director Association, things of that nature.
Okay, exact. Thank you. I just didn't know. Okay.
Sure.
Other questions? Kevin, I didn't give you a chance to throw anything in there if you have anything to add.
No, Gabby did a very good job. So did Bill. I mean, there really is nothing specifically huge in terms of any major changes. And I think the building commissioner was very, forthright in giving the information relative to his department. I don't know if Jane or anyone else has anything to say specifically about conservation, but I don't see a lot of changes in that budget portion of that budget either.
Budget hasn't changed at all, just because we were really conservative last year. So it's just about the way it was before.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, we're going to roll on to municipal buildings a little early. So George, is that you? George Samia?
Actually, municipal buildings would be Tony, I believe. Tony
sorry about that.
And Bill Eugner, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I didn't know they were here tonight. He asked me earlier.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize they were here on TV with us.
Are they here? I can't tell.
Oh, it's just me.
Okay, just Tony.
Okay. Well,
Okay. Sorry about that, Tony.
Hi, everybody.
It's not personal.
All right. So, basically on the budget, I guess we're picking up the fuel for the town, the rest of the town, for the DPW and the police and all that. That's something new that's on the budget. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there you go. My maintenance budget is pretty much, just went up very little. Everything else is utilities and fuel. A lot of it's out of our hands, obviously, but we just try to do a lot of savings with LEDs around the town and everything, cut back on most of that stuff. But the budget pretty much is what you see there, and it's really not too many changes to it.
So if I can just add to Tony's point, when we talk about, you see all the gasoline lines and things of that nature, we put all the fuel into this one department so we can manage it better, and just take it out of the individual departments, and it'll be charged back to this account. We'll still provide reports to each individual department as they use it throughout the year, but this gives us a better central control of that. The heating fuel is the same thing. That's for all buildings, and the same thing with electricity. Except for is schools rolled into this too, Tony? I believe,
no.
Or is it just strictly town? Strictly town, right?
Strictly town, yes.
Right. So So you look at electricity costs, and everybody knows that those numbers are going up. Though we do actually bid that information. We have a consultant that reviews those prices for us year to year. But I think the primary increase on electricity for that, I think it would go to the borough school that just came online in September. And so a lot of those systems are now electrified, and actually that will increase a little bit in the cost there. The one thing that concerns me a little bit is the fuel cost itself. Everybody knows the cost of oil is hovering around $91, $92 a barrel. And that concerns us greatly because that could really spiral that could spike pretty high during the next year if we're not careful. So we're going to have to pay close attention to that, because all our police cars, DPW vehicles, fire trucks, could all be impacted by that.
Hey, Bill, quick question on that.
Sure.
So gasoline, is that all taken from the town pumps by the DPW building?
Yes, it is. That's correct. That is correct.
So we can track that to the cent, really, right?
That's right. Yeah. The only thing that hinders that is the actual technology that we have in place, which is part of the renovation process that we've noted and identified with the renovations of the building that we're looking to try and do over the next few years. But you're right. Again, it's actually put in that one location so we can track it pretty closely. We have the challenge is that it gets lost in the budget sometimes, in the individual budget. So we're better off to track it this way. And I've always been inclined to agree, when you have these central costs, that it's better to have a good handle on them so they don't get absorbed into the overall budgets of each department.
So,
Hey,
quick
Bill?
question: the
Sure.
fuel pump maintenance does that have anything to do with the renovations of that facility, or is that specifically to the fuel pumps for that pump?
I believe that's the actual fuel pumps themselves, because we actually, some of the equipment is actually pretty bad, and it needs to be upgraded. I would have to defer to Tony or to Chris Gallagher on that point, but I know that they're actually for the specific repairs. But
I think it has to be inspected. Stuff
right.
like that.
Well, yeah, they have to be
Okay.
inspected, but as well as there are some repairs that are due for those pumps.
But Bill,
Hey, Bill.
I have a question. So
Sure.
for gasoline and for heating oil, does the town negotiate a volume discount? How much, and if so, how do you do that, and how often is it renegotiated? And how much of a discount is it relative to what the average person pays?
So
That was what I was just going to kick in with.
Okay, we have a regional. We buy our fuel off a regional bid. We're part of a consortium of about 15 towns, if I'm not mistaken, that buys our fuel and gasoline off of that bid. And so certainly we don't pay all the taxes that you would pay at the pump typically. So we tend to get the price right from the dock itself. But even so, so you wouldn't see the same price reflected at the pump that you would see if you were to fuel your own car. I don't know the exact difference because it changes daily or monthly rather, or weekly, depending upon where oil prices go. But when they take a delivery. So, but generally speaking, those things. Those prices are tied to a bid process that we participate in.
Yeah, I was just curious on how much of a discount it is. 20%, 5%.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah, go ahead, George.
or whoever. What we're getting, it's called Surge. The Southeastern Mass. He's right. It's a consortium of towns. When what we're getting is an economy of scale. So instead of just instead of just Foxborough, we're getting, now we're buying with 15 towns, so we get a bigger discount on it. But speaking of the discount, they usually come in with, they'll say, we're going to be 0.12 or whatever it is over whatever the standard price is at the time. There's a certain rate, and it's eluding me right now, that the oil and gas gets, and we're over that by a certain point. So it goes up and down, but it never goes up and down more than that percentage difference. So, I mean, the oil could go up or the gas could go up $1, from that point, but we're only going to be up that same percentage over it. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's what there's a standard price that comes out, and then they're quoting, we'll give it to you point such and such over that standard price.
Bill,
So the actual difference, I can't tell you the exact difference. I'll have to look it up for you and get back to you with that answer, but because I don't have that in front of me. But I would say it's fairly substantial, because it's like I said, there's a lot of taxes that go into the fuel costs themselves, and that gets added throughout the year, throughout every payment. So if we subtract that out, the fuel price is fairly significantly lower, but it's at a wholesale price, so to speak.
So, Bill, this is Dennis.
Sure.
So if you look at electricity, heating fuel, and non-heating fuel, which I guess is a roll-up from a number of departments, and it appears that a lot of them are stepping off of 2021 actual expense.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the budget, and then you have the request. My question is, do you think there's enough money there, given what's happened to fuel costs and what's going to continue to happen, in the coming year?
Yeah, the answer is probably not. If everything stays as planned, Dennis, I would say probably not. But it's been so volatile that you don't know by the time we actually institute this budget that it could actually be changed again. A lot of the stuff that's driving the prices right now is the Ukrainian and Russian fight that's going on right now. So we don't know. And then I'm hearing now that prices may get that the president is going to try and reduce the price artificially with reduced taxes. So I don't know how that'll affect us in that regard. But I don't know. It's hard to say until we actually start being impacted by that as to what the actual impact will be. But it's the point that we're nervous about, because we don't know how much that could be. But that's why you have a reserve fund in case we need to bolster that budget.
Well, maybe a different angle on this. I can't see the aggregated amounts from all the different departments, and what rate were those either being used at currently versus what you're budgeting for? In other words, if you used 148 for this combined set of categories in 22, was it based on $3 versus $3.50 where it is today? Is there a 10% difference in the price versus what your current usage and budget and current expenses are in the current year?
Well, I think what Marie's trying to come up here.
Could jump in on that. So, just to simplify it, basically what was done is we took what departments currently had in their budget, which came out to be about $125,000. Mm-hmm. We put a little extra in there, so that came out to be $128,000. And basically the way we'll manage this going forward is we receive monthly reports from the DPW that shows you exactly how many gallons each vehicle and each department pumped. And basically what we'll do is behind the scenes, we'll keep a tally of, each of these individual departments and what they've used throughout the year. And if anyone goes over these amounts that we kind of budgeted for behind the scenes, then we'll charge that overage to them. And then, going forward, once, this is the first year we're doing this. So right now we're just taking simply what the current budget is and just kind of increasing by a little bit.
What about snow and ice?
2 years. That was what I was trying to get at, was the rate gap on like per gallon or per whatever over the 2 years, and try and understand whether or not it makes sense. If it's 20% higher, then 125 to 128 won't be enough. You'll need to fill in some more. I think that's what I heard Bill being mostly concerned about, was the actual effective rate today.
Right. So I think from 1 year, it's a good question, Mike. I don't really, it's hard for us to even predict that. But I would say that, because you went from 22 to 23, the impact was not all that significant, but you go from 23 to 24, 21 to 22, the impact was not that significant, but 22 to 23, there has been a pretty good jump. So at the end of the day, as Marie points out, that we'll be able to absorb some of that in the operating costs, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be hard for us to, again, I don't think I want to just build money into that until I have a good handle on where that is. We haven't seen prices like this in quite some time. And I think I don't want to artificially build increases into the budget, which could disappear the following year or the year after. So I think if we just gauge it and deal with it as it rolls through, I think we're probably better off to handle it that way for the time being. Fuel's always been one of those really probably volatile things that I really prefer doing it the way that Maria and Georgia proposed it, because it's better for us to just get a good handle on it and really and see how it's really moving from place to place. But I think the use of the fuel itself hasn't changed all that much. I will say that the police have done a little bit more in terms of patrol, because they're active, they're on the streets, and they're doing a lot more work. But and fire, the concern there is that their runs are going a little bit longer too, because Norwood Hospital is no longer functional right now. So their runs are going into Boston and to Attleboro. More often in Boston than Attleboro, to be honest with you. So that's why you did see a little bit of a step up and increase in terms of fire, but that's based on runs as well as the potential for some increase in that as well.
Hey, Bill, John Mahoney, real quick, is the
Sure.
town subject to any upcoming mandates on buying or switching over to EV vehicles?
We're not, but we're seeing that that's starting to creep into some of the federal money that's being sent out. We saw that particularly with respect to the Build Back Better money that's out there now, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to see the guidelines come out for that. A lot of that is they're asking, if you're going to buy buses, you should be looking at electric buses. You should be looking at electric vehicles whenever possible. And they'll provide you probably with more grant funds for those things than they would otherwise. So it's, we have to be conscious of that, because it is starting to change in that direction. The problem is that those electric vehicles are much more expensive, and the batteries themselves are very expensive, and they have to be replaced every few years. And moreover than that, the bigger concern we have is the technology is such that it would be difficult for our current maintenance crews to even to take care of them, because it requires a whole new level of technology and understanding.
Bill, quick question. Non-heat fuel, does that include diesel?
That'll be in non-heat fuel. It'd be in the non-heat fuel, yes.
Okay.
Other questions? So if you take a look at the numbers there, the 128 is the new number that's been added to this budget. The 20,000 is fuel pump maintenance. That was added to there as well because of some maintenance issues with the pumps themselves. And also, if you take a look at electricity is up because the cost of electricity is simply up, period. Also because we want the Borough School on this year. It actually went online in September, so we'll start to see that number come up a little bit as well.
Okay, so Tony, thank you, and Bill, thanks for also walking us through that.
Sure.
Great.
All right. So, Bill, we have one of the biggest sections coming up now, the general government sections and so on. Is Marie going to continue sharing her screen?
Yes, if she could do that. We'll start probably with the selectmen's budget and then work downward.
Can I just throw this out to you? I saw
Sure.
I saw the Historical Commission chair is online,
Sure.
probably to present his budget, which is not that significant. It might make sense to just do that real quick and get it out of the way so he can drop off rather than waiting.
Well, we actually tied him into our budget this year.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. So it didn't make sense to actually to include because it's a small budget and it's not a lot of changes to it.
Okay.
So we said let's consolidate these budgets a little bit, and so we made it as part of ours. We didn't reduce their cost at all. In fact, they went up a little bit, just $284. But if Mark wants to say anything, it's entirely up to him. But again,
I was just trying to give him the chance to drop off before we go through, a bunch of budget categories.
Absolutely.
Or not, so we can
Well,
take
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I'm going to unmute the screen. Anyway, I just tried to push it up a little bit. We've had the same 14175 for at least the last 6 years that I've been here, so just kicked it up a few bucks. Try to move it up a little, but we're trying to get some work done at Memorial Hall. Having a lot of trouble with COVID with contractors. Even some money that we accrued last year. He keeps pushing us off. Told us the other day he's now fabricating the gutters. So we've actually been closed in January and February with COVID concerns. We're going to reopen in March. So taking the time with the hall being closed to do a lot of work on displays. Our other big things would be cemetery preservation, cleaning stones, and maybe looking for some CIP money to do some more work on the stones, as we did a couple of years ago. And we're kicking off a new display for women of Foxborough. And that's about it. That's pretty quiet, especially this time of year.
Okay, that was helpful, though. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, John Mahoney, just a curiosity question. The graveyard at Memorial Hall, what is that called?
It's the center cemetery.
And is that officially full?
Are you looking for a spot?
No, I'm not. But I read the plaque on it, and it basically said, this was set aside. I think it said it was set aside for town veterans. I was just curious whether that is still something that is open and
everybody's been
available.
buried in there in many years. So I don't think that's a possibility. But I don't know. Have to check the records.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Town Manager, if you want to now take it from the top.
Sure. So the first one is the Board of Selectmen, and we really haven't. The only thing that's different here is that we added an amount of money here for the search for some of you. I know some of you are new to the committee, but I'm going to be retiring next year. So the search process will actually occur in the next fiscal year, and we'll be looking to retain a search firm sometime in August, September of this current year, and then that process will. I just laid it out for the board. It takes anywhere from it can take up as much as 25 weeks to do this process, because between doing the actual search, the interview process, the committee work, and then also the time you have to give to the new person to actually transition to the town. Obviously, if it's an in-house candidate, then that would not be that much of a change or a difficult thing. But there's also time for consideration there that if it is an in-house candidate, that you want to try and possibly replace that person's position before they start the new job, so you're not starting in a deficit situation right out of the gate. So I think that's really the only major change in expense in that particular budget.
Bill?
Sure.
Yeah, it's Dennis.
Good, Dennis.
I've done a lot of searches over the years, and 15,000, unless there's another source that'll be added to this, that's a very low amount of money to do a professional search. Typically, unless things have changed, there used to be 20-30% of salary. So I just kind of point that out. So I don't know how that number was developed, but
sure. So in terms of, I would agree with you if you were using a professional headhunter, so to speak. But there are in the public sector, there are just professional search firms, and all they do is search for town managers or department heads, things of that nature. And I've reached out to several of these firms. There's probably about 5 that will hear from us, that will bid this work here in Foxborough, and they said, each of them said that the price would be somewhere between 10 to 15,000. And so and what happens is that, more often than not, those search processes, if you would say like you're doing a CEO or of a major corporation or maybe a major company, that would include like, bringing the person out, flying the person in, paying all their expenses, associated with the interview, things of that nature. More often than not, in these types of situations, you're going to get somebody that's a Massachusetts-based person. There'll be a few out-of-state candidates, but they'll more often than not just pay their own expense to get here. So also, things have been, the initial interviews nowadays are done through Zoom. So as a result, you don't have that expense as well. But yeah, the number's a legitimate number. In fact, it can range anywhere from 10 to 15,000. I've not seen them climb much beyond that for public sector type of searches, Dennis. So it's a fair question, though.
And I realize this is a little far afield, and we can get off it in a minute. But typically, like background for those roles.
So individuals with that, you'd be looking for somebody who has a master's degree in public administration or related field, any kind of public background. You'd be looking for somebody that has some experience working as a manager in another community, or maybe somebody who's in a smaller community wants to graduate up to a bigger community, and assistant who's been, who's working at a high level doing all kinds of things at that level to do the work. There have been people in some cases that have been working as city managers that might want to work in a smaller community instead of taking on all the things that go along with a city, which is a lot more headaches than even at this level, but which is hard to imagine, by the way. I don't know how that continues to, how that would even be, but I will tell you that usually you're looking for somebody who has some level of experience running a town, because, and especially in Massachusetts, you have to understand all the laws and rules and regulations that go with that. And there are a fair number of out-of-state candidates that have come here, but they find that the learning curve does take them a little lot longer to get used to how things are done in Massachusetts, because our labor laws are a little different. Our purchasing rules are different, things of that nature. There's different nuances that they have to get used to.
Got it. Okay, that was helpful. Any other questions here about the Board of Selectmen budget? And if not, we can move on.
So you can see that we didn't do. I am looking at. I am expected to receive an increase again next year, later this year, in salary. But I will tell you that we didn't go beyond that, because we think that where that number is probably competitive in the market. Though it is surprising me to see how those numbers are starting to creep up even beyond that number. So which surprises me, but that's where it is. As far as the overall wage numbers, they're up under 2%, and that includes all the staff members, who include the assistant town manager, who's also the HR director, the executive secretary to the town manager, and the assistant town manager, the HR specialist, communications specialist, which is Christina in our office, and Katie is the executive secretary. And a few people have longevity, and actually that number went down a little bit because one person moved to another department. So we have, and then the only sick leave vacation buyback is actually under my contract, so it's actually included in. If I don't have to, I can actually get one week paid for during the year if I don't use it. Beyond that, everything else stayed pretty flat. We didn't do anything in the other expenses. We kept everything pretty flat, and and you can see that's it's up 0.33%. The overall budget's up 1.74%. So we stayed under the 2.5 guideline as well.
Yep. Okay.
Happy to take any questions.
All right. Keep rolling.
Okay. All right. So we'll get into the finance department, and if we go down, if you want to go to the bottom line, we'll show you the differences here. But and I'll have George and Marie show you the overall, show you the changes all. So that budget, this budget here is up 1.95, again, under 2%. But there are differences throughout the year that we move some money around in different areas. But ultimately, we try to keep the overall cost below 2.5%. So I'll turn it over to George and Marie, if you want to just explain the various aspects of that budget.
Sure. The budget consists of 3 pages. I mean, I'm hoping you guys have the same booklet here, but it goes from page 51 to 53. And as Bill said, it ends with a total increase of 1.95%. The budget encompasses 5 very distinct and for the most part statutorily authorized departments. Let's start with the town accountant is one, which also has the procurement, the new procurement director, the treasurer / collector. In some towns, it's 2 separate people doing it. In our town, it falls under one roof. The board of assessors and the finance director. If you'll note, if you go down, as Bill kind of just pointed out, there are some dramatic moves. Like if we go just to the second line where it says financial analyst, you'll see a drop of 101,000. Essentially, what's happened is when Marie and I came here about 3 years ago, or getting close to 3 years ago, the office was structured much differently than it is now. And what's happened is we've gone about trying to get proper manpower for all of the statutorily prescribed departments. So what we've done is a lot of internal movement. The first being the reduction of the analyst. And if you kind of go down, you can see where the dramatic drops are, and then the increases, which really comes down to the hiring of a procurement officer. There's a line there for that. You'll see changes to the treasurer and collector section upwards. That would be the hiring of of a couple of more people there. There was a change to the assessors department for the full-time person that we hired there. There's a drop in the assessors department, which is the difference of the new gentleman, Tom Welch, that we hired in place of Hannah, who came in slightly lower. So there are a number of ups and downs throughout the budget, all culminating into a 1.95% increase. Beyond the payroll portion or the salary portion of it, I think there was a movement, a relatively substantial movement into the financial services section, which, and if I'm speaking out of wrongly, Marie, tell me, but I thought that was where we moved some money in for increases into the Munis and the ClearGov packages that we had bought, and I believe they reside in that section.
Yeah, so we basically on the expense side, so we have an upcoming Munis upgrade, which also includes having to upgrade or migrate our forms, which our forms are your tax bills, your payroll checks, vendor checks. We have to go through and upgrade all of that. So we added money to the budget to cover that stuff, in addition to obviously the annual costs for the Munis, which covers both town and schools. We have annual costs for the Munis PACE program, which is a a training, specialized training and support that they provide. So Munis, unfortunately, doesn't provide any free training. You have to pay anytime you need to get trained. And it's quite costly, but it is needed in several instances. Like, for example, when we need to run W-2s, 1099s, we mostly use it for when we have to complete a major project and we just need some assistance from them. And then what else is in here? So there was an increase to legal services. So when Paula and her group need to do a tax taking, there are costs associated with that. There was an increase to banking fees and then the ambulance billing services. And what we also did was we eliminated the separate town audit budget and we added the line to the finance budget. So overall, you'll see on the expense side, some pluses, a couple minuses. Overall, you see the increase of 8.49%, but that's the result of the added costs, like I mentioned, with the upcoming Munis upgrade, upgrading the forms and all of that, and then just an overall increase to, like I mentioned, billing and collection services. That's your ambulance billing, postage, legal services, a couple lines here and there, but most of them were kept flat. And then, like George said, bottom line, we're up 1.95%. One other thing I did want to note is in the finance budget, we have a joint IT department with the schools, and the finance department pays for our portion of it. So here we have $184,933 that covers a portion of the IT director's salary, a portion of their network specialists, and then we pay for 2 full-time IT technicians. And basically what happens with this line is when we start the budget process, we ask the schools, for this dollar amount. So this line right here, I mean, we really have no control over it. Just whatever they tell us is what we have to pay. But I mean, overall.
If I could just a note on that, Maria, that they did have to replace one of their IT people during the past year, and that expense came in much higher than what they expected because the market for IT people is very, very difficult to fill, and so they've actually had to adjust their pay and salary positions on those particular positions because they weren't able to attract anybody at the levels they were paying. So now we're seeing some of the reflection of that in the actual budget itself, because just getting those people to come to work is not easy to do.
Yeah. So Bill, that makes sense. What's the percentage of what you own versus what schools own?
So they actually have about, I think there's a total of 8 IT people total, and I'd say about 2.5 of them belong to us.
Got it.
In that respect.
Does that extend to any other departments, or is it just split between the two of you?
It's just split between the 2 of us. That's all.
Got it.
Question from Marie. She you alluded to the fact that part of the expenses in one department is billing for ambulance services and the like. Why isn't that back charged to the what we have is an ambulance budget that's a rolling, I forget the words. It's not a
the ambulance fund. The ambulance
revolving fund.
Revolving fund. That's correct. Yes,
that's it.
Right.
Yes, and we pay for the bills out of here, but then when we're putting together the budget, we pull in this budget we're pulling $1.6 million out of the ambulance fund, and that's to cover some of the staffing, capital costs, budget costs, and then these administrative costs as well. So although the payments are coming out of the finance budget, but ultimately we are still pulling that from the ambulance fund.
So it does ultimately come from the ambulance fund. It's just not shown on this display.
Right.
Yeah, we're showing you the actual budget for where the expenses are, but where the sources and sources of funding is not reflected here, but that's where the money comes to pay those particular lines.
It's one of the revenue sources that's paying for the entire budget, so it's intermingled.
Quick question, one more, Marie, is how often does Munis upgrade?
So it all depends on which version that you're on. The version that we're on is being discontinued. So we're kind of being forced to upgrade right now. I guess the good thing about it is the version that we'll be upgrading to will not require any major upgrades after that. It will just be, a small mini upgrades here and there, but not a major upgrade like the one we're having to go through right now. I think the last time the town had a major upgrade, it was just before George and I came on board, which I want to say it was at the end of 2018.
So does that buy us 4 or 5 years, or does that buy us 10 years?
I would
Probably.
say 4 or 5 years.
It's hard to tell now, but I'm just wondering.
I'd say
Probably 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I mean, it's not a massive expense compared to some upgrades, but they sort of they have control over it, right? Because they have to provide the resources to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we save money too because the town we host, we have our own servers. So Munis is not hosting, the software for us. So we do save money in that respect. But I mean, the software itself is not cheap.
Yeah.
And it's really considered to be the software for municipal finance in Massachusetts. It really is.
Okay. Any more questions from the AdCom or any more comments here from Marie or Bill or George? If not, we can.
I just had on the financial analyst position eliminated in. Go to the footnotes. I was going.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
In the funding used for existing procurement account clerk, new benefits administrator, and new procurement administrator. It appears what you actually did there is they're not new positions. They're just increased budget for positions that were already budgeted. Am I reading that correctly?
So we had the principal account clerk was an existing position. What we did last year was we cut that position, made it part-time. And then when we eliminated the financial systems analyst position, we then took that money. So the benefits administrator and the procurement are brand new positions. And basically what we did is we essentially fully staffed the finance department and put functions where they belonged using existing money.
So these are full-time positions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2 out of the 3 are new. One of them was already existing. We just brought it back to full-time because it was full-time before. But
right, so it's full-time plus benefits for the 2 new positions.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can move on.
So this is your budget, and you can see it's up a whopping 0.0%. So there's not a lot of changes proposed here. So the secretary, of course, is the person who takes your minutes for you, and your dues and memberships is money that's available to potentially, for the, I believe it's the Mass Finance Director,
It's the Financial Managers Association.
Yeah. There's the statewide financial finance committees associations, so membership. So that's about it.
Finally, a department that's being fiscally responsible.
That's right.
Well, Well, so far they haven't been able to get a lot of money out of any of these departments. It's pretty amazing, but the next one doesn't give you much either. We kept the legal services budget flat, which this is actually a good story here because this had been creeping up quite a bit in the previous years. So we managed to get this down to a pretty good number right now, and it's. I would dare say that if you go around to any one of the towns around us, that number is well above $200,000 for each one of these towns. And in this particular line, we have town council, labor council, and special council if needed. So we treat it as all one budget eventually, but you can see that even in last year, the actual expense was actually under $100,000. And I can't remember working with a legal budget that was that low. So it's a pretty good story. So we're going to keep it flat because you never know when that story could change. Actually, I thought this year we would spend a little bit more because Mike's been doing all the contracts negotiations, and he's actually been doing a lot of it himself. And so far, so good. We'll keep knocking on wood every day for that. But haven't seen a lot of expense generated from those lines at this point so far.
So for the town and special bill, let's put aside the labor council, how much of that is sort of fixed and how much of it is effectively we're being sued or not sued, or we have other things we have to pursue? Like, for example, figuring out the federal money, I think may have come out of this bucket somewhere in here.
Yeah, so we haven't had to spend any money out of labor council for this or town council for this. Where this would typically get hit on is a lot of times, we'll have town council will weigh in on reviewing town meeting articles. They'll give us language for certain articles. They'll review a number of documents that we have to sign throughout the year. They'll weigh in on cases for the Board of Appeals. They'll get involved with if the town were being sued. Sometime more often than not, that gets covered through an insurance account. So but we haven't had a lot of exposure even in those accounts. So I think it's, generally speaking, labor council is pretty much what it is. And that's, dealing with any kind of labor issue. If we get into an arbitration or if we get into a situation involving a termination that goes ugly or whatever the case may be, special counsel would be any kind of investigation that we would need if there's any kind of a MCAD type of claim or match commission against discrimination or any kind of discriminatory action. Counsel would get involved in that. Special counsel would come in and investigate those cases. Again, we haven't had to spend a lot in those lines, so thank God for that. But you never know when that could change, and keeping it at zero is I think an achievement unto itself.
Any other questions on that one from the AdCom? Marie, you can keep going.
Okay, so this is the GIS line. I'm going to have Marie or George speak to this only because I know that they work with there's a lot of different IT service contracts involved with this, and it's not just GIS per se, but I'll let Marie or George speak to this.
Yeah, so this budget here, basically the $18,000 increase that you see. So we took the website line out of the finance budget and moved it over here. And then the other IT service contracts is the line where we pay for the People's GIS annual fees. Currently, we have Board of Health inspections and selectmen on that software. And now we're adding fire to the mix. So that's the bulk of that $12,400. What also gets paid out of here is our HR onboarding software and the Rainbow cost, which is the town's equivalent of Zoom for hosting meetings and things like that.
Can somebody talk to a little for the newer AdCom members what gets supported by the GIS budget?
Yep. So the People's GIS, the Board of Health, inspections and selectmen use it all for any permits. Selectmen, they use it for, town manager's office uses it for their licenses and permits. same thing with inspections. Fire's looking to also do their or have their permits done through People's GIS. And basically what the software allows you to do is it eliminates the paper and it allows people to pay online using a credit card as opposed to coming in person and paying with a check or mailing a check. I mean, there's a lot more that the software does. I'm sure, I don't know if Bill can add any more to that.
So I'll just, thanks, Maria. That was, so for instance, in the Board of Selectmen's office, we have all the alcohol licenses, all the licenses and permits for parking lots, for special events that occur throughout the year that may require a fee. All the permitting would be done through our department. And there are a total of 212 licenses, different licenses that are issued each year through the department. And Katie Lang pretty much runs that entire process through GIS. The building department does all their permitting, all their building permits, all their electrical, water and gas. The gas permits, electrical permits are done through People GIS. The Board of Health does all its inspections through People GIS, as well as septic system inspections. All those things go through that process. Fire is being added because of all the inspections they do throughout the year. In terms of boilers, they look at occupancy levels and different, and they inspect different new developments for occupancy loads, things of that nature. So there is a fair amount of work that goes into each of these things. By putting it all online, it does a couple things. It does make it a lot more efficient to issue the actual permits. But what's even more valuable is the cross-sectional analysis. So if somebody sees something that's not correct, they're able to actually one department's able to contact the other fairly quickly and notify, because everybody gets notified when the license is up for consideration, or the permit's up for consideration. So it actually works out pretty well.
And then go ahead, Jack.
2 questions. Does it make sense to add the licenses that the town clerk issues? And secondly, speak to security of this system, the online security.
Sure. So
2 different questions.
Yeah, sure. So the licensing done for the clerk's office, potentially, Jack, the thing is that they use a separate package, I think, that's done through the statewide clerks association. They use a separate permitting process for that. So I'm not sure if it would be compatible to what they do, but eventually we'll get to that point. And certainly if that does make sense, we'll certainly look at that. As far as the security measures, that's a number one priority throughout the entire community right now. In fact, Foxborough was named as one of the cybersecurity communities in the state, well recognized for all the training we've done on this, as well as the measures we put in place to protect our systems town-wide. So I think that Aaron High would be the better person to answer that question, Jack. But I will tell you that we rank really high in the cybersecurity area, and again, just recently being named one of those top communities in the state for that.
I think the reason for the question is not a week goes by until you read it online that some community has just been scammed $1 million for some reason.
That's exactly right, and there's different ways you get in, because you can get in through the website, you can get in through the different transactional softwares that occur where you charge money, things of that nature. So you're right, it's something that we do, but we put a lot of measures in place to protect against that. So it's a good question. Any other questions?
Oh, sounds like you can move on.
I just have to jump down. I think we'll probably get into the insurances now. Like next year, I'll have links on this file, so I won't have to. You won't have to do all the scrolling.
I was going to make a joke that I spotted an error on page 180, but I was afraid you'd actually go back to page 180.
By the way, the one expense we've not really got a handle on yet, we're still waiting for, is the Southeastern Mass Regional School. I don't think we've seen a number on them yet, and that seemed to be the one missing. We've estimated that number, but we still have an actual number yet. Hopefully to see one probably within the next couple of weeks.
That's correct.
Okay, so George, you want to walk through this? This is the principal interest. This is the borrowing piece.
You're saying this is the debt, the debt section, not the insurance.
This is debt. This is the debt section.
Yeah. Well, what you're seeing, okay, and I'm looking at it on my iPhone, so I have a hard enough time looking at it on an 8.5 by 11. But the principal section, what this does is it sets out each time we go out to do a bond issuance. And for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, if I know most of you do, but I'll just say it anyway. A bond issuance sets up a form of debt very similar to if you went out for a car loan or if you had a mortgage on your house. The only difference being that you usually pay your bond twice a year, once for principal and 2 times for interest. So when we say we went out to bond on the borough school, Burrell School, Pod Bay Boroughs, and it costs some $13 million or so for the renovations. What you'll see on this particular page, or several pages, is the debt side of that particular payment. And I can't really see it at this moment, but it's like some $500,000 or so on the principal side, and some $500,000 or so or $400,000 or so on the interest side, bringing it in or around $1.1 million that we had to pay in each fiscal year until it is paid off in about 20 years. So it's more than just that. And you have your town hall on there that you did. You have renovations to the Ahern School. There was a library renovation. And the first section, of course, is the principal. The second section is the interest. And right here, it's basically you're just seeing it for the last couple of years. These payments usually stretch for a number of years from the time that they're done. So like if we did one this year, it'd probably be for about 20 years, because these are large ticket items. You don't usually do them for just a couple of years. Otherwise, you pay them outright. So most of our bonding is for 20-year periods. They're not all done on the same year. So there are going to be certain things that fall off earlier than other things are going to fall off, depending upon when they were done. And the only other thing I might add, and I hope I'm not just adding another layer of confusion or anything to it, is when we go out to bond, sometimes what we do is we do what is known as a debt exclusion, which means you are making a mini override for the purposes of paying on a yearly basis the principal and interest of that bond. And you are asking permission to override the limitations of the cap of Proposition 2.5 until that bond issuance is paid off, at which time the debt exclusion disappears, as well as the payment, as opposed to a regular override, which you say, hey, we're going up $1 million, and it pretty much stays there until the end of time, unless you do an underride to get rid of it. I just threw that in case somebody had a question on that.
So for some of the newer members, you'll see that, and Maria, if you just scroll up a little bit here, if you take a look at the various build various projects here. You'll see the Ahern School, that was an exclusion. There was 2 exclusions for the Ahern School. They had to go back and get some additional money because they ran short on that project. So they had to come back and get a second exclusion on that one. The same thing with the public safety building. They had to go back for a second one. You'll note that in the borough school, it actually was that's the newest one that we've had. But in this particular, there's no exclusion after that because we did not exclude the debt and service on either that project or town hall. And this is primarily for the newer members because a lot of and I apologize to the other members who are aware of this, but we did not exclude the debt in either one of those projects, which in itself is fairly extraordinary because most towns can't fit that into their budget. It's difficult for us to continue to do that. I will tell you that because it does impact your overall ability to. It does put downward pressure on the overall budget, and actually, it does squeeze your position on your free cash. So you can actually you'll see that. The good news is that some of our debt's rolling off, and so we're starting to see some reductions in that area. So we should actually, that should help us a little bit, but it's going to be hard for us to do another project of this significance, a new building or a major renovation without doing an exclusion to pay for it because it just isn't enough room in the budget to do that. Now, having said that, if we get to a point where there's a major development up on Route 1, the craft group has been talking about doing a multi-million dollar, probably close to $1 billion development up on Route 1. If that happens, you'll see that will actually help our position and put us in a much better position to deal with those kind of concerns. So I think we're going to be okay in the long term, but for the short term, it's going to be tight for us to continue to do something. But there are different strategies you can use, and there are some exclusions rolling off, which means that if you were to do another exclusion, that the impact would stay relatively flat to the taxpayer. They would not be impacted any further. It would just effectively replace debt for debt. So it would take it out a little bit longer, but you would end up with a new project without being impacted significantly.
I might dovetail on what Bill just said in that to do what the town did, number one, is impressive, okay, but it does present a challenge. But the unfortunate part is the very year that we began the challenge of dealing with, building that into the budget without any debt exclusion was also the year we got hit between the eyes with the COVID mess, and so it's made it a double challenge. So
we're at the point now where you see there's a lot of exclusions listed there, but and there's a few that are not. So it means we're able to do some things within the budget and make it work. Right. Overall, the total budget for debt service is down by about 4%, or about $145,000.
And Bill or George, I was looking for my copy of the debt schedule and could not find it, but do we know off the tops of our heads when the next one drops off?
Well, there's a couple coming up. I think the high school is coming off in 24, 25 in that range.
Okay.
And I think the Ahern Middle School is coming off right behind it, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I see Marie looking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll see minute drops every year, but I mean, when you're looking for something substantial that will actually benefit us, and I think it's more like Bill said, 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah, the Ahern comes off in 25. The high school renovations, I stand corrected on that. It's the next big one is the public safety building is off in 25.
Yeah, a lot of big stuff dropping off.
It's dropping off. Okay. So you're going to have those two new projects alone will yield you close to over $500,000 in debt service. So that will provide you with the ability to do another project if you wanted to without impacting the tax rate. So that's something to think about. And to put it in perspective like that, you're probably talking about a $15-16 million project at that point. Now, one other point, and this is again for the new members, Foxborough has a AAA bond rating, so which was the highest you can. It's actually higher than the United States government.
Yeah.
So, which means that our rates. The last time we borrowed, which was for the water department, some water debt that we recently did. That was we did bonds that were sub 2%. We were around 1.8%, if I'm not mistaken, 1.7%. So I don't know if we'll see those numbers again because obviously debt's rising, or the interest rates are rising. But we do get a discounted rate because of the fact that our bond rating is so high.
Yes.
So that's a good sign. That's a really good factor.
Hey, Bill,
Sure.
say these projects drop off, which give us the opportunity to maybe some new projects or things address the need. Are those CIP projects or are those individual projects that are on their own outside of the CIP budget?
They will fall into the CIP schedule, Dan, for sure. They will, because none of the project, anything that's a major CIP project would have to come before the CIP committee before it would even be entered into consideration. So some of the projects that have been discussed, though no final decisions have been made as to how to proceed, is the community center that has been discussed as a possibility. Renovations to the public works building, which is badly needed. You're probably looking somewhere in the order of about $3.5 to $4 million worth of renovations. The community center is coming in around $11 to $12 million in terms of estimate. The Taylor School will be the next major school project, but you're probably looking 6 to 7 years out in terms of that project. And then after that, there's one other one. There was four. The fire substation that's been talked about or to be located somewhere in the north side of town. So actually, the south side of town, close to 95, because it's obviously in that particular location would be better for call response, obviously. Where now the trucks have to go all the way through town to get to 95 responses into any response on that side of town.
Isn't that the point of SEMREC?
Sorry,
Jack, go ahead.
Isn't that the point of SEMREC? Sorry, Paul.
No, SEMREC only provides the call response. So they're a 911 center. They just do the actual 911 calls. They handle all of that. So SEMREC does not actually provide any services, any public safety services like fire or police services. They just do the call response and dispatch services.
So I thought that if something was closer to Mansfield, then they would provide support. No.
So actually, we actually provide support interchangeably to each other, but there are times when even that gets challenged because of the fact that both Foxborough and Mansfield are dealing with their own calls, and then they have to bring in a third. And then it also comes into play more often than not if you get a response on 95, that both towns will be challenged to get there because of where their stations are located. I think Mansfield's newest station is more of a challenge nowadays because it's located closer to the eastern border as opposed to close to the Foxborough border. So they're further removed. Their closest station now is actually located in located just right behind the Cabot Industrial Park. So that their response now is a little more challenged. But I think on our side, the closest response that we can get to it is from our public safety our headquarters. So having multiple stations is not uncommon, and it's because of the response time. That's really the primary driver of that.
I have two different questions. One, it might be that response time could be improved in some cases by having an emergency entrance only at the intersection of 495 and South Street. So that would be an access road limited to public safety vehicles. The second comment is as these bonds are paid off, is it beyond the reason, any potential reason that we might even see a reduction in taxes rather than building something new?
You could, and
That's revolutionary, I know.
That's always the debate that gets into this discussion, Jack. And our job is to provide you with options. And at the end of the day, if the town decides that they choose not to spend any more money on projects, then I think that they end up that's the will of the community. And that would mean potentially a reduction in taxes if that were to happen. That said, those needs for services, et cetera, and improvements those don't go away. In fact, they get. It's a fact that those expenses become more expensive over time. So I think sometimes you have to consider that. So,
well, I have a very basic novice. Can I ask a very basic novice question? These bonds all pay down over periods of time. There's no bullet ends on the end of it. It's not like all principal due at the end. It's all paid down over the course of the bond. And is it all fixed? I'm just trying to understand the character of the bonds that we issue.
We've been trying, like take you to the last one that we just did, or the last two we just did. There are a number of ways you can do it, where in some instances, working with your bond counsel, you could say, hey, let's do a whole bunch up front and then have it diminish over the years so it's getting lighter and lighter. Or you could say, hey, we don't have a lot of money now. Let's do it small at the beginning and have it increase till the end. We have chosen usually to do what they call a flat line, or a level, where it's it does fluctuate a little bit, but it's genuinely flat from the beginning of the payments to the end. With some minor fluctuations to make the interest work out for the bank, but it's pretty much straight, so that there's no surprise by the, like you kind of just indicated at the end, Jesus, don't we get some big payout at the end? It's kind of pretty much what you're seeing now is what it'll be next year and the year after until it's paid off.
Okay, I think you answered my question. You got my point. I was just trying to determine whether or not in 25 you had a set of bullets where you have 3 bonds maturing at once and you had a big bulk payment. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, you can actually see that in the Borough School, particularly. It's pretty flat in terms of the payment. You'll see the library renovations. You actually see a diminishing payment on the library and town hall. We front loaded the interest on both those bonds a little bit to actually reduce it over time. But yes, the way George explains it in the Borough School, we actually flatlined it in that one because it made sense to do so at the time.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? We're happy to move on to the next one.
Pensions and insurance, I think.
Pensions, I guess, is what we have. Is that okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great. So pensions this year, this is the charge that goes to Norfolk County. The town is part of the Norfolk County pension system, so we pay into that. We pay into this. This is a number that they provide to us every single year, based upon what the overall cost of the pension system. You're paying really 2 factors here. One is the ongoing cost of the pension system, as well as the outstanding debt on the system. So the outstanding debt right now is we should be able to pay that down between somewhere around 2030, 2031 in that range. And it's actually interesting, closely aligned to the OPEB debt, which is going to run into that same type of time frame. We're due to see an overall evaluation of the pension system's debt in this coming fiscal year. And we get a new assessment, a new evaluation every 2 years. I suspect, given the performance of the stock market and the financial systems, that we should see a pretty good bump and maybe a step down in terms of how much is actually due left on the overall debt service on the pension system. What's significant about both those comments, the OPEB retirement debt of the debt, and as well as the pension system, is that if we pay off both of them in the same time or roughly within a year or two of each other, that provides the town with a significant bump in additional revenue. So because right now we're paying somewhere probably close to $3 to $4 million extra in terms of just paying down the OPEB and pension debt systems. So if we're by doing that, that provides additional additional capacity within the budget to spend on other things such as capital needs, things of that nature, or operational needs. So you will see a reduction in terms of obligation of both the OPEB as well as the retirement assessment in the coming years. I mean, George and I won't be here to see it, but Marie might see this happen, and some of you may see this as well. So, but I do think that's coming, and it could come sooner rather than later. Of course, could fluctuate. This year has been a pretty volatile year in the market, but all due respect to what people are saying, and all the prognosticators are all saying that they, even despite the ups and downs of this year, they're still expecting the market to be up, which means that's good news for our investments on those two major cost centers.
When you say we're going to get an actuarial report in this fiscal year, like pin that down for me, like when should we actually see that?
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. I wish I could tell you exactly when that's going to be, because all my colleagues are asking the same question.
Okay.
We just don't have that number and have that estimate yet, but we hope to have it. I would think I don't know if I'll have it before town meeting or not, but hoping that we will, which will give us a good story to tell, or just to let people know that we've still got some work to do. But hopefully that won't be the case.
I mean, realistically, he won't move the interest rates a ton, right? He's looking at long-term payouts, but anything that's an improvement is a benefit to the town's payout schedule. So,
right, no question.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Going on to unemployment compensation, we're keeping that number flat. We did have a little bit of a bump in 2020, and that was primarily due to COVID related, COVID driven. We did see some expense in 2021, of course, but we didn't actually exceed our budget. The budget for this year is we're going to keep that number flat. Some of that was offset by additional state and federal revenues, so we didn't actually incur a major impact to the budget, even during the COVID years. So we were able to offset a lot of that. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. Right now, we're not anticipating any major layoffs, but if that were to come into play, obviously we would have to take another look at this budget.
Okay.
All right. Now going on to group insurance. This is the health insurance number, and the number that's near and dear, I think, to Dennis's heart. So because Dennis has been in that business for a long time. So we're looking at 2.7. Our estimate was a 2.75% increase. Unfortunately, I will tell you, we're going to have to make an adjustment on this line, because I just spoke with our health insurance folks yesterday, and they said that the number is going to come in around 4.07. So just about 1.25 up from what we estimated. However, I do think that this should largely be offset by increases in state aid this year. So I do think we shouldn't be impacted too significantly by even that change in cost. So and that's primarily due to the fact that with some of our claims were up the last year, we actually got money back from our insurance because what had happened was a lot of the major hospitals couldn't actually provide the optional services that they typically do. Because everybody was so caught up dealing with COVID cases, and they couldn't really bring people into hospitals during the difficult time. So that kept the cost of claims down rather significantly. However, we've seen a little bit of a tick up in the past year, because people are going back to see their doctors and having those optional surgeries done that actually are quite beneficial to the hospitals as well, but it also impacts the rates. And I think Dennis, I don't know what you're seeing in this industry, but even if a 4% increase is not ridiculously high compared to what I've seen in other places, so I think we're still okay.
That's a really good number. Now, is the town premium based or self-insured?
We're self-insured through Maya, so it's a pool-based system. So we actually benefited by being in the pool this year. So some years you don't benefit, and other years you make it up. And this year's one of the years that actually helped us.
Right. Okay.
Good. Well, we're all individually rated, but we all pay into the same pool.
Okay.
All right, moving on to risk management. So right now, we're not anticipating a major increase in this. In fact, there may be a little bit of a change here, but they're trying to hold these numbers down as much as possible. We had a good number on our workers' comp, so we're not looking at a major increase here. Comprehensive liability and public and property is really the area that you may see a tick up in costs a little bit, but right now we're not anticipating any major changes in these numbers at this point. So we may see a little bit of a movement here, but not one that I'm going to raise an alarm for at this point in time.
All these have a common renewal date, or what's the effective date, or when will you know?
Yeah, they all become effective July 1, and we're starting to see the actual numbers come in now, Mr. Chairman. So like I said, we just got the number yesterday. I had gotten some preliminary numbers from Maya and they told me that, where we stood, and so that's the reason why I'm fairly comfortable with these numbers. The health insurance number was one they gave to me just a little while ago, but again, I'm not inclined to do a lot of changing of numbers at this point in time, because I do think the longer we wait on some of these things, they may just figure themselves out anyways. So I'm not that overly concerned about it.
Question on ambulance attendance liability.
Yes.
Is that effectively medical malpractice, or is that, for example, automobile ambulance accidents?
No, that would be liability for the attendants themselves if they were performing a service on an individual.
Okay, so it's more medical than.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Bill, I say this every year. I continue to be impressed with the workers' comp rates for an organization the size of the town.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I think it's something we are all very proud of, and we work really hard at that because and a lot of the employees do the credit for this, because they do a lot of training and they take a lot of personal pride in doing things as safely as possible. It doesn't turn into a major cost concern to us like some places, and there are plenty of places that have a lot of significant claims that can really drive those numbers up. And we've had a couple of bad years, there's no question about that, but they tend to be more individual claims as opposed to a significant number of claims, which is, I think, really the major concern. You can just have a bad luck situation, it happens, but if you have a lot of claims, that's usually a symptom of the organization, and I think we're just not seeing that. So that's a good sign.
Right. Good.
The other thing I'd note, Dennis, is it's been an unusual time that workers' comp rates have been dropping in most states over the last 4 to 8 years. So we are catching some benefit from that.
We certainly are, and it's surprising to me too, because the cost of providing medical services continues to climb. But I do think you're seeing, but our actual modification is below 1 now, so or one or below, just below 1. So that keeps our costs down pretty significantly. You get up above 1, 1.2, 1.3, you're going to pay some serious premium.
And Massachusetts also penalizes those high experience mods additional to what you normally see. So yeah, it's great where you are. Right. Yep,
that's right. All right, so the reserve fund is really controlled by the AdCom. This is the event that in the event that we need it. We only had $7,000 in actual expenses in 2021. I think that was relating to, I want to say it was electric lights, if I'm not mistaken, or street lights, if I'm not mistaken. And then back in 2020, we didn't have any. So we're folks have been doing a pretty good job of managing their budgets. So the numbers that you're seeing is what you get at the end of the year. And then more often than not, you get a pretty good turn back if everything goes as planned. This past year because we had so much money come back on the health insurance side, we were able to turn back a significant amount, which actually has ended up in free cash. And so, does everybody understand what free cash means at the end of the year? It's like a year-end fund, which basically is your balance as to what isn't been spent and hasn't been committed to. All right, moving on to salary reserve, and this basically. This number is up at 275 this year. That's because all the contracts are up this year. So this is the amount. This is where we will draw from the contract settlements. And if there's any kind of shifting in salaries, et cetera, we will draw from this fund to get us through in 2023. So if there's any increase in salaries for cost of living adjustments, things of that nature, those are not reflected in the actual budget lines, but they will be transferred into those lines once those contracts become effective. So we don't front load those budgets. We keep them as is until we know what the exact number is.
Hey, Bill, can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
Should this line item level out eventually? I guess my question is, now that it's been established and the use of it is kind of being tracked, it shouldn't continue to go up year over year as long as you're not hiring additional people, as long as you're not expanding your pool, right? Like it can only go up so much.
So you probably won't see. You may see, if I'm not mistaken, Marie, feel free to jump in on this, but you may see that number come down next year because this year none of the contracts are settled. So, but once those contracts are settled, they will be reflected in the budget. Right? Is that fair to say that?
Yes. The beauty of this line is the fact that prior to Marie creating it, what we were doing is we'd say, okay, Department A, B, and C, this is what their salaries are, okay? Then we'd come back later in the year, go to free cash, take the money out, which basically skews the budget. I mean, you can account for it. Here, you're putting the money in the bottom line. It might not be in the proper, in the proper lines that it's going to ultimately end up in. But it is part of the bottom line of the budget, so that when Bill is telling you, "Hey, we're up 0.11 or whatever the amount is," you're getting a truer figure by having it within the budget. And in answer to your question, depending upon how many contracts are up, right now we're doing them all. I mean, let's say 5 years, 10 years from now, if you're looking at a 2% and you're working off of a larger salary base, then obviously that the number will be larger in conjunction to where the budget is at that time to cover 2% or 1% or whatever it is that your goal is. Do you follow what I'm saying, Dan?
Yeah, but this year it went up 43%. We're not expecting it to go up 43% next year and the year after and the year after.
Right,
it's just going to kind of even off a little bit. And if the budget's higher, the number is going to be higher. But percentage-wise, it's not going to keep climbing.
No, that's right. So next in 2 years from now, you may 2 years from now, I think you'll see that number go up again because it'll be another contract negotiation year. Whereas in the next 2 years, should be relatively flat.
But I think that the real 43% difference was when it was started the last year, not this year. We were only dealing with a couple of contracts, and this year you're dealing with all 7 because they all came on at once.
Right.
Right. So it might go down a little bit for 2 years and then come back up. I get that. I guess what I'm saying is we're not expecting exponential growth here. This is going to kind of, the numbers will remain the numbers and they'll go up and down, but it's not going to keep going up.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right.
And just a clarifying question, which I think I know the answer to, but just for the newer AdCom members. So putting school aside for a minute, for the other departments, if they're getting a step increase, it is in their budget because it's a known amount.
Yes.
Whereas these things that are currently in negotiation are pulled out separately, so we can see them separately. So those are the two components, is how I think of them. And then school's all in, right? So everything is in the school budget.
Everything's school, and everything, and their increases is in another line in their budget as well.
Yep.
Because they don't know what their final number is either at this point. So we're effectively treating each other each budget is being treated almost the same way.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that for folks.
Yeah. Right. Is that it, Marie, or anything else?
Yep, this is the last one.
Okay. So happy to take any other questions about that, but that sort of wraps up our presentation for you tonight.
Well, so sorry. When are we going over revenues and free cash and all that? I thought we would be going to that as well.
Wasn't planning on that tonight, but I mean, I don't know if we. What were you looking to do there, Mr. Chairman? I'm not sure.
Look at the free cash position. Talk about things like meals, receipts. The stuff I think we do every year.
Yeah, we do that typically up front during the budget presentation. So we've already covered those things, but if we can provide you by the next meeting, for instance, or if you'd like, we can probably give you an update of where things are at this point in time.
Okay.
How things are proceeding. But we can give you an updated report. Marie's been doing that on a regular basis to keep us updated on where things are. We can provide that for you. Okay.
Okay. I do want to spend some time on it.
Okay. Sure. We can do it. We can do that. We're happy to do it at your next meeting if you like, or meeting after that if you can.
Probably a meeting after that. We'll have to also talk about scheduling of the warrant articles. When did the warrant close formally?
So it closed yesterday officially. Okay. So now it's just a matter of there are 29 articles in the warrant. So there are of the 29, 6 may drop off because they were carryovers from the special. And I think everybody's aware of the situation that happened there. It was just anybody who wasn't aware, there was a snafu with the newspaper. Of all things, we notified the newspaper. The newspaper didn't print the ads for the hearings. So as a result, it flawed the approval process at the Attorney General's office. So we're trying to work with them to try and finalize that, and Bob Cutler's been working directly with the AG's office to try and rectify that. But if we can't rectify with them, though, I will say I'm feeling a little bit more encouraged than I was a few weeks ago about this. I think it will get resolved. But if it doesn't, we have to leave those on and just essentially take votes on all those actions again, unfortunately, because of what happened. So first time I've ever seen it happen in 40 years. So it's good news that doesn't happen a lot, but it does make it messy for the annual if we have to do that.
And we're waiting on the AG's opinion. Does it have a fixed date or?
Yeah, we're supposed to hear by March 8th is the drop deadline for that. Supposedly is what the clerk has been telling me. So, town clerk. So.
And I mean, this is the good news potentially for the AdCom, Mr. Town Manager, is the wording on these would not change, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. So, and all 6 articles that were acted on, the zoning articles that were acted on at town meeting, all 6 would have to be acted on again, even though one of them was defeated. And the reason being is because if they were flawed in terms of how they were presented, in other words, there was no hearing for them, then it could be argued that it should not have been acted on at all. Okay. Right? But because it was acted on and it was defeated, it still would. It's still likely to come back and be defeated. That's not the issue. The issue is that it has to be done properly. Okay.
Okay. And then, so you're cleaning up the warrant right now. You're going to send me a copy fairly soon. Can I share that?
We'll get you a copy as early as tomorrow. We're just trying to kind of get everything out to everybody tomorrow. We should be able to have it for you, and then. You can start looking at those. There's 3 petitioned articles this year, which is the most I've seen. I think almost in my lifetime. I haven't seen more than 1 or 2. And one deals with. I I think it's discussed these. Did I review these last time?
You did. You talked through
Okay.
them. So I
Okay, great. Yeah. So I won't take any more time on.
And the rescission of the marijuana law and the introduction of the new one. Okay.
Exactly right. So that's up for consideration this year, and more to come on that front because there's a lot to that discussion. We'll see how that all plays out.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Any other questions from the AdCom on those topics?
Nope.
Okay.
Sounds like not. All right. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Thanks,
Thank
Finance
you.
Director. Thank you a lot, Marie. I know you keep getting called on impromptu and having to scroll through that. So thank you.
We appreciate it. Happy to help. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
So anything else you need from me before?
Nope, you can drop off. Mr. Shippey can drop off. Yep.
Okay, great. Have a great night. Have a great night, everybody. And thanks for all your service. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so we got some more things to schedule. So the next thing on the agenda was approval of meeting minutes. I'll be honest with y'all, I still haven't gotten to reviewing the work Tony did, so I'm 2 behind. So if anybody wants to take one of them, that would be great. But if not, I will get to them this week and send them for your review. And then the other thing is next week we've got public protection. We've got fire and police. I may not be here next week, in which case Dan will be leaping in as the acting chair, which would be a lot of fun. So,
yeah, that'll be great. I was going to say you can send me one of those meeting minutes if you want. I'll review it.
Okay. Essentially, they're very much transcript, and so they just need some review to make sure they're actually making sense. So. Not making sense, but at least clear to a reader who was not at the meeting. All right. Dennis, I'm going to put you on the spot real briefly. I don't know if everybody reads the Foxborough Reporter, but they do report when someone pulls papers to run for office. So I'm not saying something that's not literally in the news. But Dennis has pulled papers for Board of Selectmen.
That I have.
That you have.
And I didn't know. Was there something in the Foxborough Reporter?
There was. They list all the people who've pulled papers. It's 100% public. It's that New England thing that I still, Dennis, I'm not 100% used to. Everything is open. So your name is in the paper.
Well, I'm in Maryland, so I didn't see it. Yeah, no, I'm running, and I think being on the AdCom was, one of the reasons why I've decided to run, because when it comes to the town and understanding the town and the challenges and the issues and what lies before us. And I don't think the pandemic is over, or I don't think we're going to be free of pandemics in our lifetime. Let me put it that way. So a lot of reasons for wanting to help at a higher level, but it's all because of what I learned at AdCom over 3 years. And I've described it as drinking from a fire hose, really, in terms of what we deal with at these meetings. Tonight is a good example. But yeah, it's an opportunity for me to do something in the community where I live. I've always volunteered in other communities where I've worked. I've been very activist when it comes to that. But I never had the time to really do it in the community where I live. So whether it's AdCom or the Board of Selectmen, we love Foxborough. Laura, my wife, loves Foxborough. We really found a home here. And I'd really like to, really give back, as much as I can to the community where I live.
That is great. I agree with you on AdCom being a terrific sort of precursor to Board of Selectmen, right? It's just so the budget is so complex, and some of us were here the first year a few years ago, and some of you are now new, and you just feel like you're dropped into it, and there are a million things going on, and acronyms and cherry sheets and free cash, and it's just takes a little while to absorb. But it's good to have people like that on the Board of Selectmen. Logistically, just so everybody knows, the moment Dennis actually turns his papers in, I have to remove him from the AdCom, which is unfortunate. And then he would also be removed because he's my appointment to the Personnel Board. He'd be removed from that. But my sense is that's close to being wrapped up. Ish,
Yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
extent you can talk publicly.
Right. So, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
It's a gray area here in terms of what I can say and what I can't say.
Yeah, fair.
I have a campaign committee, and you may be approached by some people on the campaign committee in terms of signatures, but I think I'll leave it at that.
That's good. So we'll keep everyone posted. I would have.
It's my recollection, Paul, that the last person who ran for Board of Selectmen from here took a leave of absence, didn't resign.
Really?
Yes, that's yeah, I'm not sure, but I believe that to be the case.
Would that be so that if the election didn't succeed, they could return? Is that the idea?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but once again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, the code, I think, is pretty clear that he has to step down, but who knows how things happen in town, Jack. So I'll be talking to Frank anyway, and I'll just make
Frank's
sure.
the final arbiter on that.
Yes.
I think it might be up to the chair, Paul.
Okay. I have unlimited power, sure. My other plea is nobody else run, please, now this year. Just so I've got enough people. So, all right. Any other topics folks want to bring up?
I actually wanted to ask if we had any more candidates coming into the pipeline. I know we're always looking for new folks.
Not that I know of. So Eric and Mike were the latest additions, and Frank did not mention any additional folks. My dream is to get it to 15 people like it was when Jack was on it in the, whatever, I'm not going to name a year, but whatever it was, a million years ago.
Yeah, more or less.
And get it up to full staff. So, all right. Okay. I don't have anything else. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hands so I can see him. And so Tony can see him when he takes notes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks for your work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.